So this entry was initially recorded for my personal blog, justtaptheglass.com. That's JustTaptheglass.com. And I'm just going to include it in its entirety in its unedited form. Enjoy. Hello, Just Tap the Glass community. This is Kenny. Due to popular demand, I'm going to start doing audio versions of a number of my articles. Keep in mind, though, that I often insert articles, links, pictures, and other excerpts in a lot of my written work, so it always pays to read the articles as well. This article is going to be on George Floyd, Donald Trump, and the fight for social progress. First point on George Floyd and Officer Chauvin. The officer should go down for manslaughter, no doubt, for leaving his knee on Floyd's neck after he was no longer a threat. He deserves that punishment for his negligence. George Floyd's epilogue is less clear-cut, though. George Floyd as victim? Certainly. George Floyd as martyr? I don't know about that. What he was doing before he was cuffed on the ground set the events in motion. He's not a figure to idolize. We've got to be careful about how freely we throw around the hero label. Next point, police brutality and the biggest threats to blacks in America. Police brutality is a problem. The biggest threats to blacks in America, though? Not even close. There exist larger, more pressing hurdles facing the average black person in America on a daily basis. Income, health, education, parenting concerns. Just a few of the issues more likely to impact your life than the transgressions of the police. Statistically even, black-on-black civilian crime is much more likely to impair or end the life of the average black person than a run-in with the police. I'm not denying that racism at the hands of the police or other people, or recommending silence on issues that matter to you most. I'm just putting the specter of police fatalities into context. One concern that's seldom voiced: the assault on free speech of anyone who has a dissenting opinion, not just on this topic, but others, is dangerous. We've got to be careful about allowing emotions and hidden agendas to control narratives. Be mindful of those in the background pulling the strings who benefit when the country settles for low-hanging fruit. Next point, on creating effective protest. I've actually got a few excerpts I posted on the site, so it might be better you read them, but I'll mention a couple of them here. Two major problems facing the protest community. One, the inability to create change, and two, a sullied reputation of many of the members of the protest movements. People by and large want to know what's in it for them. That's the biggest question as to why they should sign up to support your cause. And I tackle some of that in one of the excerpts listed here on the article, if you go read it. Protest gatherings themselves that devolve into looting and vandalism mobs just undermine the cause. That mayhem puts businesses on notice about locating their stores in impoverished neighborhoods, those who actually need convenient access to services the most as well. Many of the people protesting aren't doing much to move the needle. A sizable portion of them arrive with ulterior motives, content just to be seen or galvanized by being part of a crowd. And then there are those looking for opportunities to act up, emboldened by the belief that they'll get away with it because they're part of a crowd. Also lost in the shuffle is the impact of these mass gatherings on the COVID infection curve. Politicians, no strangers to double talk, are condoning protests, arguing that social activism trumps any other considerations, be they pathological or ideological. This sort of pandering casts doubt on the actual threat level of the coronavirus to local municipalities and undermines government credibility going forward. Apparently, infection breaks for politics. Next point, on the impact of this situation on the 2020 elections. I'd be remiss not to throw in a few words about the potential impact on the 2020 elections here. A lot of criticism has already been lobbed President Trump's way. That's expected given his position in the free world. Like every modern-day president, he will receive inordinate censure for the bad and more praise for the good than he actually deserves. President Trump was a particularly conspicuous target because of the frequency and carelessness with which he communicates through social media. That said, the whole Floyd protest movement should have negligible impact on Trump's chances for a second term. Ditto for local elections. Some of you out there might be wondering, but what about all these protesters, civil unrest, celebrity commentary on the need for change? That imagery has got to play in the coming elections, right? I will introduce you to a psychological phenomenon known as the impact bias. And what this means is that we tend to overestimate the importance and duration of most events on our lives. Most notable events hit hard for a few weeks and then gradually fade away from national consciousness. We remember what happened, but it recesses further and further into our minds as time passes. That's never been more true with how quickly news cycles turn nowadays. The world reacts for a short while, and then everyone goes back to their normal lives. Many celebrities and organizations comment on notable events for publicity purposes, seizing the opportunity to pander to fan bases. They offer a sympathetic quote, bask in the goodwill, and consider it mission accomplished. Talk is cheap, and committed problem solvers are in rare supply. In an uncertain world, there will always be something to get outraged about in the future, so people tend to forget what's happening today when something else happens tomorrow. You know, like the way Americans followed through on eradicating Boko Haram after 2014 kidnappings in Nigeria, which birthed the Bring Back Our Girls movement. If you remember that, a lot of celebrities and folks were on that. Unfortunately, that terrorist organization is still alive and wreaking havoc in West Africa, but the world has moved on to the next cause du jour. But hey, awareness is what counts, right? Not necessarily results, eh? And many of the same protesters out in force in cities across the country are those most likely to skip the voting booth on election day. Easy answers to difficult questions never go out of style, and most activists would rather look the part than actually do the work required to get results. If you hated Trump before the incident, you still hate him. And if you're one of his supporters, nothing new hit the scene to alter that. There was, and still is, a lot of talk about foreign influence on the last presidential election. For centuries, governments have attempted to influence foreign policy for their own agenda. With the advent of social media, that's never been easier to accomplish. Don't be fooled, though. Voter apathy, misaligned values, and flawed political outreach were much bigger factors in the previous presidential election outcome than any foreign interference. As convenient as it is to blame Russian boogeymen, the Democratic Party committed serious strategic blunders in their approach to winning the vote. Trump opponents would be wise to focus on the real reasons the 2016 contest didn't go their way. Come to terms with the truth, and the path to victory becomes much clearer. Do let me know what you think about the Floyd situation and the ramifications for Americans of all colors going forward. Happy to hear it.